26, 2021. And tonight, we're going to have the invocation and pledge allegiance by board member Kevin McCarthy. Everyone, please stand.
Most Heavenly Father, please watch over us and guide us throughout this day tonight and every day and every possible and also, Heavenly Father, please guide us to ask for a moment of silence in respect to the dual service members and those 15 in Afghanistan, their families, their this solid. Through Christ our Lord.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. Thompson, is there any adjustments to the agenda this evening?
Not this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Gummow, can you please call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder to all board members, please speak clearly and directly into the microphone when you're participating in discussion. We will start with Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Lindmark, Mr. McCarthy, Mr. McDonald, Mr. Neighbors, Mrs. Red, Mr. Salgado, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Tassoni, Mr. Webster, Mr. Westcott, Mr. Arena, Mr. Billich, Mr. Booker, Mr. Butita, Mrs. Crosby, Ms. Fellers, Mr. Gurl, Mrs. Gorel. Mr. Chairman, 18 board members present, 2 absent.
Thank you, Clerk Gummow. We do have a quorum this evening. Move on to the agenda number 5, under awards presentation, public hearings, and public participation. So we have no awards this evening, no presentations. I don't believe we have any public hearings this evening. Any public participation?
None.
Mr. Thompson?
No.
Thank you. So we'll move on to proclamations. If you want to come forward, please. This proclamation will be given, you can come right around up here, to Alyssa Maggio and Dr. Martell. Okay, this proclamation is in recognition of International Overdose Awareness Day, August 31st, 2021. Whereas International Overdose Awareness Day is a worldwide event held each August 31st to remember those who have lost their lives to an overdose. And whereas families throughout Winnebago County have suffered the tragic loss of loved ones due to opioid addiction and overdose. Whereas Winnebago County has disproportionately impacted by the opioid epidemic, resulting in significant morbidity and mortality among residents. Whereas the opioid response team, comprised of agencies from Winnebago County, has worked to reduce the impact of the opioid epidemic through education and stigma reduction, access to care, safer prescribing and dispensing, supporting justice-involved populations and rescue. Whereas the drug overdose prevention program of the Winnebago County Health Department and its partner agency provide training on the administration and supplies of Narcan to the community members to intervene and prevent death in opioid overdose. Now therefore, I, Joseph V. Shirelli, as chairman of the Winnebago County Board, do hereby proclaim August 31st, 2021 to be International Overdose Awareness Day.
First of all, I would just like to say thank you for proclaiming August 31st as International Overdose Awareness Day. in memory of lives lost to opioid overdose. To show your support, anyone in the community could wear purple on Tuesday or get trained in naloxone. The health department has trainings on Zoom, and we can do them for businesses and stuff in person as well. The health department will be seen wearing these t-shirts on Tuesday. And then we also, our community partner, Live Real, will be hosting a memorial event at Nicholas Conservatory at 7:15 on Tuesday, and any community members are welcome to join. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number 6. Can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of July 22nd, 2021, and layover of August 12th, 2021? Motion by Mr. Billich and second by Ms. Crosby. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, are there any board members opposed to that motion? Thank you. Clerk, I'm out. All board members present are a yes. Move on to number 7, the consent agenda. Can I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda? Got a motion and a second by Mr. Gurl, a motion by Mr. Hoffman. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, are there any board members opposed to the consent agenda? Motion to approve. Thank you. Clerk Gummow, all members present are a yes. Number 8 are the appointments. We have one this evening to be announced, the River Bluff Advisory Board to be laid over for 30 days. I appoint Board Member Jaime Salgado. That is a layover. Number 9, the reports of standing committees. First is the Finance Committee. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee has actually one item today. It's under old business, unfinished business, and this is so I move to approve ordinance increasing the fee for duplicate copies of tax bill pursuant to Property Tax Code 35 ILCS 200/20-12, and this was to be laid over from our last meeting, so I move to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Salgado. Do we have a second? Mr. Gurl seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I believe because if it's an ordinance, we have to have a roll call. Clerk Gummow, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Mr. Kelly. Mr. Lindmark. Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McDonald. Mrs. Red. Mr. Salgado.
Yes.
Mr. Schultz. Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Webster. Mr. Westcott. Mr. Arena. Mr. Billich. Mr. Booker. Mr. Butita. Mrs. Crosby. Mr. Gurl. Mrs. Gorel. Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Chairman, that is 18 yes and 2 board members absent.
Thank you. The ordinance has been approved. Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. Our next item was a resolution, but in our last, prior to this meeting, we had a finance committee that was taken off the table to agenda for approval tonight, so we're striking that out today, so just wanted to let you know. We did have a very productive finance committee meeting behind closed doors within 30 minutes. Mr. Rickert presented new financials looking in the right direction, hopefully looking forward to September 2nd. Mr. Rickert, is that when we're having our next meeting, correct? As a whole. All right, so more information on that. If you want questions or anything like that regarding the budget, please reach out to Mr. Rickert, myself, or the Finance Committee as well. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Zoning Committee. Yes.
Mr. Salgado is still present. Thank
Yes.
you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarity, in the past, we laid over the budget from the time it was presented to the time it was voted on for 3 weeks. And I just wanted confirmation that in our budget process that we approved previously, we reduced that time frame from 3 weeks to 2 weeks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Okay, Zoning Committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. Your zoning committee has but one item on the agenda tonight. This is for first reading. We'll leave it late. Z0621, it's a map amendment to rezone plus minus 3.54 acres. And this is in County Board District 4. Property is located at 8396 Elevator Road in Roscoe Township. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Webster. Okay, Economic Development Committee, Mr. Billich.
We have no report today, Mr. Chairman. We are, however, having a meeting next week at 5:30 on Monday. I apologize.
Okay, very good. We have Operation Administrative Committee, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Operations Committee has no new business for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We have Public Works, Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Works Committee has 6 items tonight. The first 3 do not have to do with any monies being spent by the county, so I'll read them in and motion to approve and appropriate and speak to them as needed. The first item, Resolution 21-024. It's a resolution authorizing IGCA between the Winnebago County and the State Toll Highway Authority for the operation and maintenance of emergency vehicle preemption equipment at the I-90 ramp. Preemption equipment is for the emergency vehicles to be able to change the lights and go through without much holding them up. The second item, Resolution 21-025. It's a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between Winnebago County and Rockford Township for Phase 1 and 2 design engineering services for the widening and repair of a Guilford Road culvert over Keith Creek. And the third item is Resolution 21-026. It's a resolution tied with the prior. It's a resolution authorizing the execution of a local public agency engineering services agreement with Willett Hoffman and Associates, Inc. for Phase 1 and 2 design services for the widening and repair of Guilford Road culvert over Keith Creek. I would move all 3 of those items.
We have a motion to approve all 3 resolutions. Is there a second? Mr. Webster seconds the motion. Discussion. Mr. Tassoni? No.
Questions as necessary?
Any questions or discussion? All right. Is there any board members opposed to the motion to approve all 3 of those resolutions? Okay, thank you. Clerk Gummo, can you mark all members present a yes? Mr. Tassoni?
Yes.
Next item.
Thank you, Chairman. Not that I heard something about calling a roll. Next item on the agenda is it's a resolution authorizing the award of a bid for Latham Road widening from Meridian Road to Owen Center Road. It's Resolution 21-027. It's a budgeted item, $504,000, $784.75, and I would so move.
Mr. Tassoni moves to approve. Mr. Webster seconds that motion. Any discussion on that motion or the resolution? Hearing and seeing none. Are there any board members opposed to the motion to approve that resolution? Oh, Mrs. Redd.
Why are we only widening it from Meridian to Owen Center?
Well, it's out there and it's on the edge of my district, for my opinion. Basically, probably funding primarily, but that's the worst section of that road. Going east towards Maine is in a lot better condition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Yes, Ms. Borrow.
As I recall, we upgraded the Meridian Road to Latham. Plus the fact that we're having heavy traffic for those trucks. Is that unusual actually improving that from Meridian to Latham?
It's not on Meridian Road. It's on Latham from Meridian to Owen Center. It's necessary, and with that, I believe there were some culvert improvements with it as well. The county, I believe, Carlos, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the county will be out there doing some in-house maintenance to widen what our capabilities are, and then subbing out the full asphalt, the current. And if Mr. Molina would like to add to that, please.
Actually, no, this is what you are awarding tonight. It's a it's a contract to widen the road. The road is pretty narrow and it's in really bad shape. So what we're doing with this contract is widening the road, putting bituminous pavement. And then next year, we're gonna come back with another project to resurface the entire road. And to answer Mrs. Oral's question, that will include the section from Owen Center to Route 2.
Thank you, Mr. Molina. Any other questions? Are there any board members opposed to the motion to approve this resolution? Very good. Clerk Calmar, can you please mark all board members present a yes? Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next item comes by way, it's an ordinance establishing a speed zone on Baxter Road from Illinois 39 to US 51, east side ramp to South Mulford. It's ordinance 21-028. This ordinance would lay over for 2 weeks, but I would appreciate if I may move to approve, to suspend the rules and vote this in tonight. I would appreciate it.
We have a motion to suspend and a second by Mr. Kelly. Is there any discussion on the motion to suspend? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to that motion to suspend? Okay, the motion to suspend has been approved. We have your full motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I would move to approve ordinance 21-028. It's this ordinance establishing a speed zone on Baxter Road from Illinois 39/US 51, the east side ramp to South Mulford, and I would so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Tassoni to approve the ordinance and a second by Mr. Kelly. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Salgado.
Well, he was probably going to answer, but just wanted to know what the speed decrease or establishment.
Currently, if, like I say, it's out in Mr. Kelly's district, I believe. Is that correct? And I'm familiar with the area. It's all new pavement. There's new trucking companies. It's out by our, Maggio Truck Center, our I-39 development. New pavement, a lot of trucks going to the landfill, a lot of them. It's currently 55 miles an hour. It's being reduced to 45.
This originally came from a request for the developer, Mr. Mark Good, in that area and other folks. So we're just accommodating the correct request with the resurfacing and widening. Any other discussion? I believe since it's an ordinance, we need to take a roll call. Clerk Gummow, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will start with Mr. Lindmark, Mr. McCarthy, Mr. McDonald, Mrs. Red, Mr. Salgado, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Tassoni,
Yes.
Mr. Webster, Mr. Westcott, Mr. Arena, Mr. Billich, Mr. Booker, Mr. Butita, Mrs. Crosby, Mr. Gurl, Mrs. Gorel, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Chairman, 18 yes, 2 board members absent.
Very good. The ordinance has been approved. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our final resolution, 21-029, it's a resolution authorizing the supplemental appropriation of MFT funds for the maintenance of county highways. I would so move and speak to it.
Mr. Tassoni moves to approve. Mr. McCarthy seconds that motion. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution allows for the use of motor fuel tax for 2 maintenance patching projects, concrete and asphalts. The funds, the line item necessarily was not included in the appropriation in March, but the dollars were included in the 2021 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Is there any further questions, comments? Ms. Red.
Can you tell, thank you, Chairman, can you tell us what highways will be included in this?
Well, I can't necessarily tell you what highways, if it'll be, I'm assuming it'll be miscellaneous, various locations. Mr. Molina, do you have specific locations?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tassoni. This chair keeps going down on this. I'm doing squats all night. The concrete patching is on Elevator Road, Perryville Road. There's a section on Auburn Road, and I'm forgetting another location. There was 4 of them for concrete patching. On the asphalt patching, it's on Baxter Road and by 251, section on Riverside, We're also doing one on Cunningham Road, just by Meridian Road. And I know I'm forgetting one for the asphalt section, but it's several locations that just needs this maintenance type of maintenance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe, I guess it's not appropriate for right now, but Mr. Molinas, I know Riverside is getting terrible. Do you have a plan looking forward to do something with Riverside?
Thank you. Yes, we do. What we're doing, one of these asphalt patches that we're doing on Riverside is that really bad section between Alpine and Forest Hills Road. Now, we have been granted a portion of the dollars that we need to improve the entire section of Riverside from Material Avenue to about Sage Drive. Now, that's the $20 million project. So far, we have $6 million. Now, because it is a federal project, it does take time. So, to give you a timeline right now, we are, as a matter of fact, we're working on phase 1 engineering, but between phase 1 to phase 2, it takes 2 to 3 years. So construction, being optimistic, would be sometime in 2024.
Yeah, Mr. McDonald, that $6 billion he's referring from is coming from the motor fuel tax from the MPO that was just approved earlier this year. So that's the $6 million, and just hang tight. The remaining dollars for that $20 million are in the works. All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, are there any board members opposed to approving this resolution? Hearing and seeing none, we'll cast all members present a yes, Ms. Come. Any further business, Mr. Tassoni?
That concludes the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we have Public Safety and Judiciary Committee. Mr. Gurl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report.
All right, very good. Thank you. I believe that concludes our committees. We'll move to unfinished business. Operations and Administrative Committee. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would once again like to make a motion to lay over this resolution.
Very good. We are working on that resolution, so all parties know that. Mr. Butita. Seconds, and Mr. Arena seconds. Very good. Thank you. Is there any discussion on that layover? Are there any board members opposed to the layover? Seeing none, Clerk Gamal, can you cast all members present a yes to layover? New business. Is there any new business in front of the board this evening? Mr. Webster.
Just want to wish Angie Gurl happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you, Angie.
All right. Well, many blessings to you. Very good. Any other new business? Well, since we're congratulating, I'd like to congratulate our own Dorothy Red, because her daughter, Carla Red, is our new Rockford Police Chief. And I can honestly say, as a former alderman, your daughter does a wonderful job. Yeah, it's very good. And I also want to congratulate our new fire chief, Michelle Pinkow, who's also been recently appointed. So congratulations to both of them. And best wishes from all of us in the county. Any other new business? Mr. Kelly? No. You're just looking at me like you did. Okay. So we have next is I'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation. Mr. Arena motions, and Mr. Gurl seconds that motion. Is there any discussion on going into closed session? Do I need to take a roll on that, or just to? Okay, Clerk Gamal, could you please call a roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McDonald. Mrs. Red. Mr. Salgado. Mr. Schultz. Mr. Tassoni. Mr. Webster. Mr. Westcott. Mr. Arena. Mr. Billich. Mr. Booker? Mr. Butita? Mrs. Crosby? Mr. Gurl? Mrs. Gorel? Mr. Hoffman? Mr. Kelly? Mr. Lindmark? Mr. Chairman, that is 18 yes and 2 board members absent.
Very good. We will now proceed to go into closed session. I believe we need a minute here. Or is it anybody that needs to leave the room?